The words ghost town conjure up images of tumbleweeds blowing through the Old West, the abandoned shanties of the gold rush, or even the mass migrations during the Dust Bowl of the Great Depression. The spooky thing is, there are still quite a few ghost towns in Canada to this day. Today, we'll take a look at 5 Canadian ghost towns you've probably never heard of. Let's scare up some stories, shall we? Dorreen, British Columbia. Ghost towns aren't always totally devoid of life. Our first has one year-round resident. Their name is Dulce, and they are the caretaker of Dorreen. Located near Mount Noss, about 50 kilometers from Terrace, Dorreen was founded in the early 1900s. At first, it was built for the gold miners of Lorne Creek. But that didn't pan out too well, pun intended. The would-be prospectors turned homesteaders instead. The arrival of the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway helped the town flourish into the 50s. It turns out there may not have been gold in the river, but there was in the mountain, and a mine operated there until 1953. Numbers dwindled, and now Dorreen is a town of 1. At least in the winter, for much of the year, the site is now ATVers' paradise. Remote enough that ATVs or hiking are the best ways to get there. Cottages have been built for newer visitors, and a number of the original buildings still stand today. This strange mix of new and old makes Dorreen a truly unique destination. Kitsault, British Columbia. Next up, a town that isn't just occupied, it's owned. In 1979, a molybdenum mine, yes, you should Google that one, was being built in BC's North Coast region. Phelps Dodge, an American company, built a town designed for 1,200 people to staff and support that mine. This town had a mall, a restaurant, a pool, and even a bowling alley. In 1982, molybdenum price crashed hard. The mine's value plunged so much, the town was completely evacuated only 18 months after residents first moved in. In 2004, Krishnan Suthantaran, an Indian-Canadian businessperson, paid less than $6 million to buy the entire town. Sure, he's paid at least $2 million more since to keep it up, and it's closed to the public, but things might be changing soon. Kitsault is a proposed location for a terminal site in the export of liquefied natural gas. If the pipeline does get routed that way, Kitsault may just rise from the grave. Orion, Alberta. At its peak, this southern Alberta hamlet housed about 150 people. It sits about 80 kilometers from Medicine Hat. Built in 1916, it died in the 1930s. Another victim of the infamous Dust Bowl, drought, grasshoppers, and the Great Depression, Orion still houses whole streets of abandoned buildings. 7 residents remain today, but the town's grain elevators were leveled recently. Just one more reason the town's future seems bleak. Even worse, in 2016, the pioneer-era hardware store, Stevens HDWE and Garage, burned to the ground. No one was hurt, but a piece of history was taken away forever. The store was still in operations at the time of the fire. Jonathan Coe, a forgotten Alberta who had visited the store many times, wrote, "The old store was a veritable museum and time capsule rolled into one." Val-Jalbert in Quebec. This town lasted less than 30 years. Founded in 1901 near Chambord, the closure of its pulp mill in 1927 meant the entire town was abandoned in just a few years. Oddly, the town was very advanced in its day. It boasted electricity and running water, all 25 years before the rest of the province. Workers at the mill were among the highest paid in the day. Some even held on for years hoping the mill would reopen, but in 1929, the company ordered the buildings boarded up. The mill still stands, as do over 40 of the town's original buildings. In fact, Val-Jalbert has a reputation for incredibly well-preserved buildings, possibly the best in the country. Not sure how they judge that. Is there a nightgown section? A talent contest? Val-Jalbert is a heritage site now, and visitors can also make the short trip to the Wiatchun Falls, which are higher than Niagara Falls themselves. If heights don't bother you, you can even step out on the glass platform of the lookout housed within the falls themselves. There are tours, immersive history shows, actors in period costumes portraying townspeople, restaurants, guest rooms, and other great tourist trappings. It's second only to the Zoo of St. Felicien when it comes to Lac Saint Jean tourist attractions. If this is a ghost town, it's a friendly one. Ireland's Eye, Newfoundland. The great-grandfather of all Canadian ghost towns, Ireland's Eye was first settled, at least by Europeans, in the 1600s. We're not even sure when in the 1600s, because Google Maps was 400 years away. People fished the area for cod in the centuries thereafter, and there was a peak population of 157 in 1911. Newfoundland didn't even join Canada until 1949, so this place was on the decline even before they were eligible to be included in this list. Now, the settlement was on an island, 13 kilometers from the nearest road, and the fishery was in steady decline. Ireland's Eye never really stood a chance. The entire population was moved away in the 1960s as part of what was called the Fisheries Household Resettlement Program. Today, a lot of buildings have decayed, but those that do remain, as well as the incredible natural scenery, still attract visitors. So, there we have it, 5 awesome slices of history that still stand today. With Betty White gone, there are even fewer of those left. Each and every one of these ghost towns would make a great tourist destination. For those who don't live in Canada, you cannot see them all in one day. Look it up. Canada's kind of big.